Hey everyone. So I did my case study on a child named John. He goes to my school. John is a first grade student in a 612 self contained class. He is the only child in the school with Down syndrome. I just want to put some emphasis on that this is going to be a social emotional lesson for John because he does have a lot of social and emotional deficits. So, John has Down syndrome, which is defined as a condition in which extra genetic material causes the child to exhibit developmental delays and/or intellectual disabilities. So, according to the text, students with Down syndrome will typically face articulation issues, expressive language, and auditory processing skills. They may also have a hard time building relationships with others due to their expressive language deficits and just their social ability to connect with other students. Currently, John has difficulty with staying on task and he'll become easily frustrated with things that are too difficult for him. He has a hard time building relationships and maintaining relationships with his peers because he becomes overly excited about things, and sometimes if he's not overly excited, it will be the opposite. He'll be overly upset and he'll get very melancholy. He'll go into a corner and cry, especially when it comes to having to present something. He'll get a lot of anxiety and whatnot. So, however, his strength is that when he is encouraged to do something on his own by a teacher or by a peer, he wants to do it and he'll actually jump up and down and say, I do, because he can do it on his own, which is great. He wants to prove himself and his worth, which is definitely an excellent strength that we can work on throughout the lesson. So for this lesson, we will be working on shape manipulation to create real life animals. So because my learners are, all of the learners in this class, especially John, they are all under grade level. So even though they're 6 years old, they're all working at like a 3 to 4 year old's academic level. So prior to this lesson, students would have read a book on animals and would discuss shapes that they can identify within the animals. So if it's a cat, maybe we can say, well, what shape does the cat's, what shape is the cat's face? And by a show of hands, I can say, is it a circle? Is it a square? Is it a heart? And kind of get the whole shape idea going with animals and how shapes make up all different kinds of objects. So for this lesson, after we will already have a lesson on shapes and how shapes make up real life objects, to kind of grasp the students' interest, I will ask the students, has anyone ever built a real life object out of Legos or blocks or drew something that matched a real life object? So maybe a flower or a house. I would have students raise their hands to share experiences on things that they have built. Now for John, I want him to be able to participate without necessarily having expressive language. So I will tell students, please raise your hand if you feel that you have done this experience too. So let's say a student raised their hand and said, oh, I've built a house with Legos. Then I would say, has anyone else built a house with Legos? And maybe John would raise his hand. If John raises his hand, the whole idea of this would be to encourage John's participation. So saying, wow, John, you built a house before too. Well, today's work, you're going to build something even cooler, even better. And I know that yours is going to come out excellent. Kind of single him out and boost up that confidence to be able to do today's work. So to promote understanding for what's going to come, I am going to show students what I made. It's a little cat. So I'm going to ask the students to point out some shapes that they notice in my cat. So I want the students to be able to say, what is the head? The head of this cat is a circle. What are the ears? A triangle. What are the eyes? Circles. And so on and so forth. Rectangles for the legs and whatnot. So the idea of this is that my cat looks like a real cat. I wanted it to mimic a real life object. And that is a key vocabulary word for this, is mimic or represent real life object. So John will be paired with a student that he already has a bonded relationship with and that he gets along with well, and he will also have a para with him. So when students go off on their own to build their real life animals of their choice, before doing this, I almost forgot, I will show the students that they are going to fill out this worksheet. Their animal choice, so cat. So my animal's ears are triangles. My animal's eyes are circles, and so on and so forth. There are some things that not everyone will have. So my animal's fin is so if they choose to make a whale or something, versus a cat. A whale would have a fin, but a cat wouldn't. So this is kind of like their planning page. So I would go over this with the students as well. This is for the end. I want them to be able to write up a paragraph about their animal of their choice. So I want them to be able to say, why did they create the cat? What do they like about it? And some of the body parts my animal has are ears, a tail, and eyes. I chose circles for the eyes because my animal has yellow eyes. Now, the students with ESL or IEPs, such as John, will get this template just to help them to formulate their own paragraph, but higher level learners will be able to write their own paragraphs on their own about the shapes that they use to create the different body parts. So once they go off on their own, John specifically will be given choices for his shapes. So he might have the para, or his partner might say, well, what do you want to make for the face of the cat? And instead of John having to articulate or use expressive language for this and to still feel like he can participate, he will have choices laid out in front of him, shapes. So he can say, what do you want the ears to be for the dog? A circle or a triangle? And he might point to the triangle, and then the teacher can help him to glue the triangle onto the body parts of the dog. So just to help him to participate without having to use expressive language or articulate, that would be a great thing, is to use receptive language by pointing. So when it comes to writing the paragraph, John becomes very emotional when having to write because he can't hold a pencil that well. He has a hard time gripping it. So he will use a token board, and every time that he fills in a blank word on the template that he is given, he will receive a token, and he will work to earn free time during the time between finishing his paragraph and the presentations. So lastly, when presenting their shapes, John will choose whether he wants his peer, his para, or himself to present his shape. Giving him this choice will help him to be a little bit calmer about the presentation. So again, that he can still participate, but not necessarily have to speak up, which causes him to have emotional issues during work, is when he has to speak up and present and be expressive and articulate his feelings and thoughts. So this whole lesson is really to get John to be an active learner, participant, just like everybody else, but in a way that works for him, where he doesn't have to feel so nervous and anxious about being expressive and whatnot. So this is my lesson. I don't want to go too over time, but of course the end assessment would be their ability to just express shape manipulation and how they utilize them to create real life animals. Thank you so much.